Welcome to Rogue State with me, Lembit Öpik,
And me, Mark Oaten.
where we take an irreverent look at a rogue state, also known as
I guess UK
you
and
got it,
beyond as well.
and beyond as well, and beyond as well. Have you been?
I'm good. I'm just worried about this rogue state. Are you saying I'm an old rogue or something? I've got my granddaddy Christmas jacket on.
That's ageist. On two counts, old boy.
Have you just come from Morocco or something?
I did this for you
What, to offend me?
because you just criticize me for being boring when I wear a suit.
Well, fair enough. But I mean,
Is this the most important thing that you want to talk about?
no, I want to talk about, well, I want to know what you think is going to happen for 2025. I want to talk about predictions for this year with the various political parties. We've absolutely got to talk about Musk. I mean, that was a incredible story a week or so ago.
And Reeves, what a mess up she's been making.
It is. She's back from China, so we want to talk about that. And I'd like also to get a little bit into the NHS because, in all seriousness, it is an absolute disaster at the moment. So there's a lot to talk about.
Oh, there's one other one I've got.
Huh?
Yeah, I want to talk about British Airways, but we might not get to that. We'll see. We'll see.
Okay, we'll see. If we
it's
get
a
around to it.
big bugbear for me.
It might be delayed, that one. But we'll see. But let's start with predictions. And I mean, I want to start with the Conservative Party. I think that's going to be absolutely fascinating. We're a few months into the new leadership of Badenoch. And
Badenoch. Single D. Badenoch.
Badenoch. She's going to
It's
be known
Öpik. It's not Öpik.
Badenoch.
Badenoch. Oaten. It's not Oaten.
All right. Okay. I'm dyslexic. I am.
But when you're not reading it, you're saying it.
How do you know I'm not reading it? I've got a little cue card over there. Some of us take this seriously.
Show me the person. Show me the person.
Holding it up. It's like that thing from Love Actually. Badenoch.
It's good, actually. It's a great film. Yeah.
Is it Badenoch?
Badenoch. Oh, man, this is awful.
Well, that's...
Sorry,
but isn't
Kemi.
that the problem?
Is it Kemi? It should be Kemi, actually. I'll get myself
Isn't that the problem?
What?
That she's got very little profile. Nobody really knows what's going on. And I think the real dilemma for the Conservative Party this year is that they have got to try and appeal two ways. Do they think, right, we lost so many seats to the Lib Dems, we've got to become a slightly tougher version of the Lib Dems? Or are they so concerned about the threat from reform that they think to themselves, right, we've got to try and become even more right-wing than reform? And the difficulty is that those two are totally incompatible, but they need to figure out what they're going to do, how they're going to attract those Lib Dem or reform voters back. And it's a really tough act for them.
You sound as confused as the Tories on this one.
Yeah.
It's simple to me.
Go on.
They lost because people hated what they'd done in 14 years. Not initially, fair play, but by the end of the thing, they just didn't have any narrative. They had no message. They were arguing with themselves, which often happens after that long in office. I think they need to just go back to being a single Conservative Party. They don't have to be like the Lib Dems. They don't have to be like Reform. The difficulty is they sound just like you sounded a minute or two ago because they're not answering the question. They're asking it. They're not answering it. And Badenoch seems to be spending most of the time telling us what was wrong without telling us how she's going to put it right.
It's a problem. It is a serious problem for them because you might say, well, they need to define themselves as Conservatives, not through the prism of left or right. But we know that the Conservative Party is split. We know that there are, I think, at least potentially some Conservative MPs that will be very tempted to defect to reform. And if they don't start making progress in the polls, in the local elections, if they don't start to be able to hit the headlines in the way that reform are, then I think that she is going to become in difficulties. If you look at what happened when they came out of power last time, they went through a number of leaders before they found a leader that could bring the party together. They had William Hague, they had Ian Duncan Smith, they had Michael Howard, until they eventually came upon Cameron. I don't believe that she will remain leader of this party. I think she is just one of probably two or three caretakers before they actually find themselves an identity.
They haven't really got an obvious leader. That's one of the problems. Out of 120 or so MPs, you'd think there'd be one outstanding character, but there isn't. And she didn't win by that big a margin.
No.
I still think she was probably the least worst option. She's got the potential to be a maverick success, but she's just not playing on that.
But also there's personality traits which I think are irritating. I find it a little bit irritating the way she talks. And I know that shouldn't be an issue, but it sounds a bit patronizing. I don't think she's going to be coming across well at the dispatch box. I don't think she's relatable to. And there are these rumors flying around that she's just bloody hard to work for as well.
I'm more sympathetic than you are because I can see that some of the things you find frustrating are malleable. You could change those things. So
You were a voice coach, weren't you?
Yeah.
Now, hang on a minute. Which Tory leader did you vote? Was it Liz Truss?
Yes,
Yeah,
I did train Liz Truss actually.
Yeah.
All those decades ago. Sorry, UK. No, I think this is actually, ironically, we might be talking about this later, being slightly rehabilitated by the abysmal performance of Labour. But I'll come back to that.
True.
In terms of Badenoch, she needs to figure out who her best advisors would be. She needs to reach out. She needs to build a team. I'm not seeing those things happen. And the internal word in the Conservatives is that she has created a bit of a castle, and not many people are getting into that castle. This is probably a lack of experience, to be honest with you, more than anything else. But then she needs to get the experienced people who have been successful in place. David Davis, the senior one, he would be very good, for example. But I don't know if she's listening to her.
I mean, look, I remember back in the Charles Kennedy days when we were heavily involved in the party, we did polling on the opposition leaders, and we found out pretty quickly that the public didn't like Hague. And the dial never shifted.
You had to do research on that, did you?
The dial never shifted. You know, quite early on, people made their minds up. Same with Ian Duncan Smith, same with Michael Howard. You couldn't shift the dial. And I think there is a potential personality problem with her, and it's going to be very hard for them to shift the dial. But let's shift to the real story, which is, you know, what is going to happen to Labour? What is going to happen to Labour this year?
We touched on it already. What a mess.
Yeah. 5
to 7 months into your serious administration, and no one really believes in it. There's some tiny rump of people who still say that they're optimistic about the country, but I don't meet many of them. I think they might be the stalwarts who feel that they have to say it because they voted Labour, and they don't want to look like fools for voting for Labour. But these pointless fights, reaching out across the pond to the United States to start blaming Elon Musk, for example, for interfering here, when, hold on a second, the Labour Party sent 100 current and former activists and workers to help the loser, Kamala Harris. That's just wrong at every level. And the hypocrisy is breathtaking. What do you make about this Elon Musk spat?
I mean, the Musk thing is a little bit of a side issue as far as I'm concerned. In terms of Labour itself, you know, they're going to have to look long and hard at what's gone wrong. It's been a terrible honeymoon. I mean, I've had better honeymoons with my first wife than this one, frankly. It's been absolutely appalling.
Apologies to Belinda who's watching.
It was a great honeymoon until we played tennis on it.
I don't even know if that's a metaphor. Just move on.
No, I hit the tennis ball on the back of her head and absolutely.
And that's where it all started going wrong.
20 years later, she's still not forgiven me. Look, it's been a terrible period, and I think one of the problems is that Keir Starmer is not a natural politician. So he doesn't think instinctively, and he needs to surround himself with people that do. Lord Mandelson would have been a good choice, but he's gone off to Washington. Alistair Campbell's making far too much money on podcasts, and yes, I am jealous. So he needs to find good people that can advise him, because there were so many own goals last year that they got to shore up their defense. And that's the big message from this year. Get a decent defense in place and make sure there's no more own goals.
And they're not doing that. Back to this Musk thing. They have chosen to take on the world's wealthiest man, who can afford an unlimited number of lawyers, if he wants to complain about what? The fact that he has been interfering in British politics. Just have a think about that, Keir. You claim, or other people claim on your behalf, that you weren't responsible sending all those people from the Labour Party to America. So you're not taking responsibility as leader. That's a really bad look for a prime minister.
No, that's nonsense, Lembit.
What?
It's absolute nonsense. Everybody in every political party sends people out to get involved in the election. They do it.
Yeah,
you've got young, bright things that want to go and do stuff in October and November, and where there would have been Liberal, Tory, and Labour and Reform people going.
That's not my
there.
point.
What is your point?
It's the hypocrisy. He's now moaning about the fact that Elon Musk is interfering, in his view, with British politics. Well, you started it, Keir.
No, he did. Musk's a maniac. Look,
he's not a maniac.
Even his closest friend he's fallen out with, Farage, or I think they're friends again now. Musk is a maverick. He's like a blinking James Bond villain. And the fact that he starts lecturing us on what we should be doing in this country is wrong.
Oh, but it's okay for Starmer to appoint a foreign secretary, David Lammy, the great political genius, David Lammy, who describes the next president of the United States of America as a woman-hating, neo-Nazi sympathizing sociopath. That's all right, is it? And it's all right for him to appoint the great Peter Mandelson as British foreign secretary, as the British ambassador to America, after he said something comparable. That's all okay. And then he's surprised when Donald Trump's henchman, Elon Musk, might be a little bit more willing to make comment about the UK. Come on.
Musk is a story that's going to keep giving and giving. The guy cannot hold himself back from saying ridiculous things. And we're going to see that prediction for 2025, lots more from Musk. But let's move on to another party.
Yeah, because you're losing.
No, I'm not losing.
And you know it.
I'm not.
You decide.
Losing.
Anyway, okay. Go on then. Go on. Yeah, go on then.
Let's move on. Let's move on to our old party, or our current party. I'm still a member. Are you still a member of the Lib Dems?
Move swiftly on.
No, oh, you see, because you're losing. You're not a member.
I had a massive big spat when my mother was dying and they threw me out of the party when I didn't notice they were writing to me. I appealed. I won the appeal on the basis that if they threw me out, then they would have had to throw Ed Davey, the current leader, out, and Nick Clegg out because they'd been far more reputationally damaging than anything I'd done. So I have some amount of bitterness on this one.
Let's not.
But that's what you want to talk. Is that what
no, I don't want to talk about reputational damage.
You invaded Poland.
Absolutely not. It's not a strong card for me. That.
Oh yes, good point. I wish I thought about that.
Thank God, someone's forgotten. But look, it's a frustrating time.
You're the gift that keeps on giving.
Yeah, you laughed just a little bit too much there, Lembit. The problem for the party is that they've got 72 MPs, huge breakthrough, and we've got no sense of that breakthrough in Parliament. We're not seeing them on the media. Poor old Ed, you have to feel sorry for him. He got himself on the media when he was bungee jumping and falling off this and doing that kind of stuff. They're struggling to make an impact. What they badly need are local elections in May, and they need to do well in those. But unfortunately, the horrible truth is they need an MP to die. They need a Conservative or Labour MP to die, and they have a chance then of a by-election and getting themselves back in the headlines. But it's a problem for the party because I don't know what the point was of getting 72 MPs. You know, great, but where'd you go next?
But when we were members of Parliament,
now you're the old rogue.
We had so much more profile. We had Charles Kennedy, Paddy Ashdown, really big characters. Not so much the others, but those two were really, really powerful. Ed, I used to share a suite of offices with him. Nice enough guy. But where is he? Where is he on the media? Where are you, Ed? Why aren't you on there? And
well, he would argue that the media are not covering him.
No, he would, because he's not doing it right.
He would argue that, and it is frustrating because I still see media stuff focusing more on the SNP, who are now an irrelevance around Westminster, than the Lib Dems, who are a big party.
Because it's more interesting. That's why.
But how do the Lib Dems make themselves interesting?
By actually having an interesting liberal and democratic agenda. At the moment, they're just conforming with the uni party. They seem to be in favor of the unwinnable war in Ukraine, in my opinion, unwinnable war, in favor of this climate rubbish. There is nothing differentiating.
So Charles Kennedy got lucky in this sense that Iraq became a defining moment for him.
He could be lucky by saying that he's opposed to the war in Ukraine. He just hasn't got the courage to do it.
Is Europe the issue? Should they now make a categorical statement that we want a referendum and want to rejoin the EU?
You can't have another referendum.
You just make
best of three, is it?
Yeah.
So if they win that one, then we have one decider.
Best of three.
It was meant to be the one referendum for a generation,
and it was full of misinformation. The electorate were completely misinformed about that election. Now, look, I'm trying to say.
Oh yes, when David Cameron more or less said, if we left the European Union, there'd be World War III.
We need the Lib Dems need an issue which can define them, and I'm just saying maybe it's time to be really ballsy and say, look, here's the evidence. We're how many years on from Brexit? It's not delivered. Quite the opposite. Let's get back in.
The country doesn't want to go back in. You have another referendum.
Look at the public. Some of the polls suggest it does.
Oh no, they don't.
Yes, they do.
We're not going to fix this right now.
Okay.
I'll tell you why I think that your strategy is ineffective. Maybe just let's give it to you. Maybe I don't think it's right, but the Lib Dems could win on rejoining the European Union. I don't think so. But all the other things you're saying, Reform are saying, let's have a public inquiry about the rate of children by Asian gangs, and then there's this great fear that you're going to be accused of racism. That's just a fact. That happened. Let's have an inquiry and find out who was doing what. Let's stop this nonsense about net zero. They could say that, but Lib Dems will never say that. Reform are saying that. Let's stop funding the war in Ukraine. No party, apart from really respecting George Galloway, are saying that. There are things that they could be saying, but they're not differentiating because they just become part of the uni party.
Okay, but nobody is differentiating except Reform. And I accept Reform of differentiating. And one of the issues I want to get into in our weekly chats is the challenge for the centre and the left is to address the issues that Reform are addressing in a way that they feel comfortable with. And at the moment, the only party addressing these issues is Reform, and actually the left need to address them as well.
So you're going to join Reform then?
I'm not going to join Reform. I'm going to actually challenge the left to start talking about these issues in a way which they feel comfortable with. And that's something that they're not doing at the moment.
There is a simpler thing you could do.
Join Reform.
Join Reform,
No,
yeah.
I'm not doing that. I'm not doing that.
Well, you've just said yourself that the Lib Dems at the moment, with all of that firepower, are just sitting on their hands.
But it's not just the Lib Dems, Labour and the Conservatives.
Yeah, okay, all three of them.
Okay, let's get on to Reform.
All of everything you're saying drives you towards Reform.
The biggest opportunity in 2025 has to be for the Reform Party.
Yeah, I think so.
I think Farage has played a blinder in talking about the fact they're going to win the next election. He's got them into the news, he's raised the agenda, he's raised the profile, and now people believe, because he said it, they believe they can win the next election. It's a very, very clever move. Two challenges as far as I see. Can they get their grassroots structure in place to be able to win local elections and by-elections? Because you need not just to do this with the air war, but you need to have a ground war. The second challenge is Farage himself. If something were to happen to him in a way, he is so built into that party that they need to have 3 or 4 other substantive figures that the public can recognize. Those are the challenges for 2025 for them. Grassroots grow more than just Farage.
Farage is a huge character. I would say he was the most influential politician in Britain in the last 20 years. He can reasonably claim ownership, whether you like it or not.
10 years.
Well, I would say longer. The Brexit achievement, pulling the United Kingdom out of the European Union, is the biggest decision that has been made in British politics in 20 or 30 years, in my opinion. And it was his charisma that made that happen.
And he won the last election, in effect.
He essentially
did.
In
effect, he won the last election.
And cost the Tories just about everything in terms of authority and credibility.
And everything that everybody else is doing at the moment is defined by what Farage is saying. We're doing it. Every single party we talked about, we looked at that party from a reference point of how do you deal with Reform?
And in that sense, number one, I do think that Reform is setting the agenda, and we seem to agree on that. But the other thing I agree with you on is they haven't got what's called the ground war. Now, they've got the air war. That's what you see on TV, chit chat, things like this. But they're not GB News. They're not putting the leaflets through the doors. And not putting the leaflets through the doors across the country means they're not doing what the Lib Dems did, invisibly perhaps, and they continue doing invisibly perhaps, to keep those seats. The Lib Dems are probably going to hold quite a lot of those seats just because they're doing things in seats which they represent. And you see it locally, but you don't see it nationally. Now, Reform needs to speed up because they've got some local elections at least in May, even if Labour's trying to cancel some of them. But the real big issue here is, can they make that conversion from the razzmatazz to the pushing leaflets through letterboxes and getting your fingers bitten by dogs?
Or, and it's a big question for me, are politics changing so much that the old leaflet through the door and the ground war is actually disappearing, and that it will be the Musk money that buys adverts on social media, puts all of that into a combination of the air war, which we've normally seen as being national, but taking that air war and doing mini air wars all over the country? I'm wondering whether putting those leaflets through the door is going to die out. Social media is king.
I know why
it's taking over.
I know why you're saying that.
Because I hate delivering the
yes, exactly.
exactly.
You hope it's all going to be.
I mean, look, I had loads of fingers before I started delivering.
Apologies to anybody who's had their fingers
bitten by a dog.
And I don't think there's a substitute from the fact, to quote Tip O'Neill, who was an American politician, all politics is local. And if you get the leaflet through the door, you know someone's been there.
If you've got something to say, put it on the leaflet. Was that Penhaligon?
Yeah, write it down on a piece of paper and stick it through a letterbox. David Penhaligon.
Or Pardue. One of the other.
Well,
Penhaligon, I think.
And the fact is, they were both liberals, by the way. And the fact is, I don't think there's any substitute for that. Anyway, you're just arguing against yourself because you said they have to do it, and I think they have to do it. They have to get the potholes fixed. They have to get hundreds of councillors elected in May. They have to start doing exactly what you said, building the base, because at the moment it's a very narrow pyramid, and they need to make it really wide. And of course, then you get new blood in as well.
Yeah. So those are some of our predictions for the parties as to where they're going to go. But we have to talk about it's not the elephant in the room. I'm not going to describe Rachel Reeves in that way. but the back
You just have.
No. I said I'm not. But the backdrop to all of these discussions about where the parties go is going to be, again, the economy stupid. And this is absolutely crashing in a way that none of us, I think, saw happening. The incompetence of that budget, the knock-on consequences of that, the pressure that the pound is coming on, dropping against the dollar, the prospect for so many mortgage holders of interest rates coming down, now suddenly being told it may not happen, the risk of inflation creeping above 2.5% and going back to 3%. This is an economic nightmare, and there is talk of the latter part of 2025 even hitting a recession.
Yeah, well, we'll need to cover this in an entire separate show, but for now, I think that the most ludicrous thing she did was go begging to China, who was meant to be our enemy a few months ago. And now I personally think we should be friends with them, and now suddenly we're pals, going all the way over to China while London City bans.
What was she, I mean, look, I'm no Rachel Reeves fan. I think she's made a right something up it.
Yeah, that's close.
However,
we did have to edit that out.
However, we are rogues. We're allowed to say what we like. For goodness'
family show. Carry on.
She was called on to cancel China. That would have been absolutely stupid, because the one thing that she doesn't need to do is to start making this country a world internationally renowned place where you could do business. The London stock market is failing. It's failing to attract businesses in. We need China to help with that. We need to do trade with China. Absolutely we do. And I know, because I work with China a lot and I go out there a lot, if you cancel a trip last minute,
massive disrespect,
huge disrespect, and that would have backfired enormously. No, so she was right to go to China. And I mean, if nothing else, she got the air miles, Lembit. I know you care about. I'm going to
talk about that in a second. My issue isn't that she goes to China. It's back to the absolute debilitating problem with this government, the inconsistency, because they were slamming the Tories for having a two-tier policy on China. Now they're going cap in hand to China, which they have to do. My position on this, I was deputy chair of the all-party China group when I was an MP. I love China. I used to work there a little bit myself in Guangzhou. So it's the right thing to do. But it's the mixed messages again, because now we're told the Labour likes China. Well, I've always liked China. So then are they going to change their opinion again if it's expedient for them to do that? As for the air miles, I'm going to have to say, I have my own little...
He has a lot. He has a lot of air miles. I mean, I don't do too bad myself, but you have a lot of air miles.
I do. Yeah, well, Avios is now called.
Yeah.
But I've also got a big beef with British Airways. Sean Doyle, you listen good. What you have done to the Frequent Flyer Club, used to be called the British Airways Executive Club. Now it's the British Airways Club, I think it is, something like that, is bad enough, because it's completely changed the goalposts now. An ordinary person is just never going to get to those high echelons, which is perhaps what you wanted. But then you lose the data. You've lost a decade of my data. Now,
calm down.
No, I'm not going to calm down. The hundreds of thousands of pounds spent on your airline. And then I get a message saying, well, we've lost the data. We're not going to do anything about it. You are going to do something about it, because this is a test case. I put it on record now, Sean. You're going to be hearing from me all year long, and the longer it goes, the more people will hear too. Thank you. I feel a bit better now.
Hearing from Lembit all year long, I would give in straight away if I were you my strong advice.
But what's the point of having?
For those that don't understand what's going on here,
yeah, you explain. I'm too annoyed.
You're too emotionally connected to this. There used to be bronze, silver, and gold tiers, and you became a member. If you got to gold, it gives you all sorts of
really
benefits.
Nice lounges.
A nice lounge, quickly you can get through. And for business people, being able to get through is quite quickly. Essentially, they've changed the goalpost, so it's going to be a lot harder for people to get to gold. This is a fringe issue. It is absolutely frustrating.
This to you?
It is. I get affected by it as well. But what I'm trying to say is that I have people that listen to the podcast, they're going to say, quite rightly, what are those two old rogues on about?
All right, I'm really sorry,
because they're not going to be able to go into really nice lounge anymore. And you know what?
I'm really sorry. I'm sorry. If it's boring to you, it's not boring to me. But I'm not sorry if you're watching Sean Doyle. In fact, I'm going to send you a copy of this.
Oh, for goodness sake. What? Let's end on New Year's resolutions. Do you have any, Lembit? I mean, I know I had one.
You start.
Mine was to be less grumpy. And I think that's gone quite well today.
Yeah, you have.
In fact, you've been the grumpy one.
Yeah, you've passed it on. The torch has passed to a younger generation.
Oh, by 1 year.
By 1 year.
By 1
year.
year. When are you going to be 60?
March.
Ah, when's your birthday?
March the 2nd.
I'm March the 8th.
I know.
Are you Pisces?
What a coincidence. We've had this conversation for the last 30 years.
Have we? And that's because my memory's
It's your age.
It's my age. We're both Pisces. That means we're sensitive and caring.
Apart from when it comes to Sean Doyle, Airways.
Come on, end on a New Year's resolution. There must be one.
Actually doing the basic paperwork. I can do some tough things that other people can't do. And I can't do the basics. And I just fall and crash.
A bit like British Airways.
A bit like British Airways. Yeah.
And on that note,
all right, time to stop.
You've been listening to The Rogues State
with me, Lembit Öpik.
And the older rogue, Mark Oaten.
See you next time.